The antiseptic smell burned my nostrils as I paced the cold linoleum floor, my cheap sneakers squeaking with each anxious step. The hospital corridor lights buzzed overhead, too bright, too harsh against my sleep-deprived eyes. 3 a.m, and Lily's fever hadn't broken. My 4-year-old daughter's tiny body looked even smaller against the stark white hospital sheets, her chestnut curls, just like mine, splayed across the pillow as machines beeped a rhythm that both reassured and terrified me. "Ms. Carter?" The doctor's voice made me flinch. Dr. Patel's expression told me everything before her words could. The tests confirm our suspicions. Lily has aplastic anemia. It's quite advanced. The room tilted. I gripped the plastic chair beside me, knuckles white. What does that mean? Is she going to be okay? Her bone marrow isn't producing enough new blood cells. She needs a transplant, and soon. Dr. Patel's gentle voice couldn't soften the blow. We'll need to test you immediately as a potential donor. Do you have any other family members who could be tested? I shook my head, throat tightening. It's just me and Lily. I'd been on my own since her father disappeared the day I told him I was pregnant. No parents, no siblings, just 2 paychecks that barely covered our tiny 1-bedroom apartment and the babysitter while I worked double shifts at the hotel. Well, let's start with you then, she said, though something in her expression told me she already suspected I wouldn't be a match. Mother's intuition, the same feeling that had brought me rushing to the emergency room when Lily's bruises wouldn't fade and her constant fatigue became something I couldn't ignore anymore. Hours blurred together, blood draws, forms, medical terms I couldn't fully understand. Somewhere between dawn and full morning, the worst was confirmed. I wasn't a match. The chances of finding an unrelated donor quickly enough were explained to me in percentages that made my stomach knot. I sat beside Lily's bed as she slept, her skin so pale it seemed translucent under the hospital lights. We'll start you on immunosuppressive therapy today, Doctor, Patel said, while we searched the donor registry. And the cost? I whispered, though I already knew the answer. Let's focus on treatment first. There are programs, but I knew those programs, the wait lists, the partial coverage. My insurance from the hotel barely covered routine checkups. When Lily woke briefly, I painted on a smile and read her favorite story about the princess who saved herself. She fell back asleep midway through, tiny fingers still clutching mine. I stepped into the hallway, leaned against the cold wall, and finally allowed myself to cry. Silent, shuddering sobs that left me hollow. "Ms. Carter?" A nurse approached, her face pinched with concern. "There's a call for you at the nurse's station." I wiped my face with my sleeve. "For me? Who even knows I'm here?" She shrugged. Said it's about Lily's condition. Confused, I followed her to the desk where she handed me a phone receiver. "Hello?" My voice cracked. "Elena." The male voice on the other end was unfamiliar, deep, with the faintest trace of an accent I couldn't place. "I understand your daughter needs a bone marrow donor." I froze. "Who is this?" "Someone who might be able to help." A pause. "I have a potential donor for Lily." "How do you know my daughter's name? How do you know anything about us?" Panic rose in my chest. "I know many things, Elena, including that you're running out of time and options." His tone remained calm, controlled. "My driver is waiting outside the hospital. Eastern entrance. Black Bentley. He'll bring you somewhere we can talk. I'm not going anywhere with a stranger. My daughter is sick." "Your daughter has aplastic anemia. She needs a bone marrow transplant within weeks, not months, and you're not a match." His voice hardened slightly. "I wouldn't waste time asking how I know. The question is whether you want my help." I gripped the counter, my knees suddenly weak. "Why would you help us? You don't know us." A long silence followed. "Let's just say I have my reasons. The car will wait 20 minutes. Your choice." The line went dead. I stared at the receiver, my heart hammering. "Everything okay, hun?" The night nurse looked concerned. I nodded automatically, though nothing was okay. Lily was dying. I was broke. And a mysterious stranger somehow knew details about my daughter's condition that had only been confirmed hours ago. I peeked into Lily's room. She slept peacefully for now, machines tracking her declining health with cold precision. Dr. Patel had been clear. Without a donor match soon, the prognosis was poor. What choice did I really have? 15 minutes later, I'd spoken to the nurses, promising to be back before Lily woke. The eastern entrance was deserted at this hour, save for a gleaming black Bentley idling at the curb. As I approached, a mountain of a man in a tailored black suit emerged from the driver's seat. Without a word, he opened the rear door. The interior smelled of expensive leather. I slid in, clutching my threadbare purse to my chest, suddenly aware of my unwashed hair and the coffee stains on my jeans. "Ms. Carter." The driver nodded in the rearview mirror as he pulled away. "Where are we going?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Not far." We drove in silence through the sleeping city, moving from the hospital district to downtown, then into the exclusive neighborhood I'd only seen from a distance, where the houses sat behind gates and walls. The Bentley finally turned into a private drive, stopping before an imposing stone mansion with softly lit windows despite the hour. The driver opened my door. "Inside, he's waiting." I followed a stone path to massive double doors that swung open before I could knock. A slim woman with a severe expression gestured me inside. "This way." The entryway alone was bigger than my entire apartment, all marble and crystal under soaring ceilings. My sneakers squeaked embarrassingly on the polished floor as I followed her through to a study where a fire crackled in a fireplace large enough to stand in. "Wait here." The woman left, closing heavy wooden doors behind her. I stood awkwardly, afraid to touch anything. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling. A massive desk dominated one end of the room, and leather chairs were arranged near the fireplace. Everything spoke of old money and power, things as foreign to me as another language. The door opened soundlessly. I turned. He entered like he owned the air itself, which, in this house, I supposed he did. Tall, with broad shoulders outlined perfectly by what I instinctively knew was a bespoke suit. Dark hair, the kind of thick black that absorbs light rather than reflects it, swept back from a face that belonged in a Renaissance painting. Late 30s, perhaps. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who never questioned his place in the world. But it was his eyes that froze me in place, dark, intelligent, and utterly unreadable as they assessed me. Elena Carter. My name in his voice wasn't a question. "Sit." I remained standing. "Who are you?" A barely perceptible smile touched his lips. "Cautious." "Good." He moved to a sideboard, pouring amber liquid into 2 crystal glasses. "My name is Alexander Vega." The name meant nothing to me. "You said something about a donor for my daughter." I wasn't interested in pleasantries. "How would you know anything about that?" He gestured to the chairs. "Please, sit. You look dead on your feet." Reluctantly, I sank into the leather chair. It was obscenely comfortable after hours of hospital plastic. He handed me a glass I didn't want but took anyway, then sat opposite me, one ankle resting casually on his knee. "I have connections at Memorial. When your daughter was diagnosed, I was informed." "Why would anyone inform you about my daughter?" He took a sip of his drink, studying me over the rim. "I make it my business to know what happens in this city." A chill ran through me. I'd heard whispers from the other maids at the hotel about men who controlled things from the shadows. Men you didn't cross. "You still haven't said why you care." Alexander set his glass down. "Your daughter needs a donor. I have access to someone who's a match." My heart stuttered. "How could you possibly know that? The doctors just ran the tests. I have resources." His gaze remained steady. "The donor is already being prepared. The procedure can happen within days." Hope, dangerous, desperate hope, flared in my chest. Then suspicion doused it. "Why would you do this? What do you want?" Smart question. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. Up close I could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle. "What I want is simple, Elena. Your time." "My time?" "Your daughter receives the transplant. The finest care. All expenses covered." His voice was matter-of-fact. "In exchange, you come work for me." I nearly laughed. "Work for you? Doing what?" "I clean hotel rooms." "Not anymore." His eyes never left mine. "You'll live here, in the East Wing. Your daughter, too, once she's recovered. You'll attend certain events with me. Be seen." Nothing. Inappropriate. Understanding dawned slowly. "You want a fake girlfriend?" A shadow crossed his face. "I want a companion who isn't after my money or connections. Someone genuine." "Why me?" The The question escaped before I could stop it. Something flickered in his eyes. Let's say you remind me of someone. I set the untouched drink aside. This is insane. I don't know you. You could be anyone. True. He reached for a folder on the side table and handed it to me. These are your daughter's medical records, including tissue typing. And these, he pointed to another page, are the donor's results. A perfect match. I stared at the papers, medical terms swimming before my eyes. How did you get these? As I said, I have resources. He stood, buttoning his jacket in one fluid motion. The donor is my cousin. He's willing, but there's a condition. You, I realized. Alexander nodded. Me, or more specifically, my wishes. I've been looking for someone like you for some time, Elena. This situation is convenient. Convenient? Anger flashed through me. My daughter is dying, and I'm offering to save her. His voice remained calm. Consider it a mutually beneficial arrangement. I stood, clutching the folder. Then you leave with my best wishes and return to the hospital to wait for the donor registry. His expression hardened slightly. Though with Lily's blood type and ethnic background, the odds aren't in your favor. The truth of his words hit like a physical blow. I'd seen the doctor's face, heard the carefully worded cautions about managing expectations. How long? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. How long would I have to stay? 1 year. He moved closer, and I fought the urge to step back. Your daughter receives the transplant regardless. I'm not a monster, Elena, but you stay for 1 full year. And then what? Then you're both free to go, with a generous severance. I thought of our apartment with its leaking ceiling and secondhand furniture, of working double shifts while still barely making rent, of Lily's face, growing paler each day. I need to think about this. He nodded, reaching into his pocket and extracting a business card. You have until noon tomorrow. After that, my cousin leaves the country for work. As if summoned by telepathy, the door opened and the severe woman reappeared. The car is ready, sir. Take Miss Carter back to the hospital, Maria. I turned to leave, then paused. How do I know this isn't some elaborate lie? Alexander's expression didn't change. Call the number on the card when you decide. If it's yes, the donor will be at Memorial by evening. If it's no, well... He picked up his glass again. I suppose you'll have your answer then. Dawn was breaking as the Bentley delivered me back to the hospital. I sat beside Lily's bed, watching her chest rise and fall, the folder from Alexander clutched in my hands. I'd seen enough medical forms in the past 24 hours to recognize real ones. A perfect match. A life for my daughter. All it would cost was a year of mine. At 11:58 a.m., I called the number. He answered on the first ring, as though he'd been waiting with the phone in hand. Yes, I said, without preamble. But I have conditions of my own. There was a pause. Then what might have been a chuckle. I'm listening. I keep my job at the hotel, part-time. Unacceptable. It's non-negotiable. I surprised myself with my firmness. I need something that's mine. Something normal. Another pause. 2 days per week. Maximum. And Lily stays with me, always. She's not some accessory to be hidden away when inconvenient. Of course. He sounded almost offended. I would expect nothing less. I took a deep breath. Then we have a deal. Excellent. His tone warmed slightly. The donor will arrive at Memorial within the hour. I'll send Maria with papers for you to sign. Alexander? I said, before he could hang up. Yes? If you betray us, if this is some kind of trick, you should know I'll do whatever it takes to protect my daughter. Whatever it takes. This time, I was certain. He laughed, a rich sound that sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. Elena Carter, he said. I'm counting on it. I hung up, staring at Lily's sleeping face, wondering what devil's bargain I'd just made. And with whom. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of medical jargon, consent forms, and the constant beeping of hospital monitors. True to Alexander's word, the donor, a slender, serious man who looked vaguely related to him, arrived at Memorial within the hour after my call. He nodded politely when we were introduced, but said little. I couldn't decide if his silence was respect or disdain for the woman who'd made a deal with his powerful cousin. Dr. Patel couldn't hide her shock at our sudden stroke of luck. A perfect match appearing out of nowhere is unusual, she said, eyeing me carefully as we stood in the hallway outside Lily's room, especially one willing to donate immediately. I focused on the clipboard in my hands. I reached out to some distant relatives. She didn't believe me, I could tell. But the match was real, the paperwork impeccable. When medicine has what it needs, questions about providence become secondary. The transplant procedure was scheduled for the following morning. I spent that night curled uncomfortably in the chair beside Lily's bed, watching her sleep, wondering if I'd sold us into some elegant form of captivity or saved her life. Perhaps both. "Mommy?" Lily's voice, raspy from sleep, pulled me from an uneasy doze just before dawn. I leaned forward, brushing hair from her forehead. "I'm here, sweetheart." Her small face was serious in the dim light. "The nurse said I'm getting new blood today." Something like that. I tried to smile. "Special cells that will help you make your own healthy blood again." She considered this with the gravity only a 4-year-old can muster. "Will it hurt?" "You'll be sleeping, honey. When you wake up, it'll already be done." "And then I'll be all better?" My throat tightened. "Not right away. It takes time. But yes, then you'll be better." She nodded, accepting this with a child's faith. "Can we go home after?" Home. Our cramped apartment suddenly seemed like paradise compared to what waited at Alexander's mansion. "Not right away," I said carefully. "We're going to stay somewhere else for a while. Somewhere nice, where people will help take care of you while you get better. Like a hotel? Even fancier than the hotel where Mommy works." She smiled, revealing the gap where she'd lost her first tooth just weeks ago. "Will you still tell me stories?" "Every night," I promised, taking her small hand in mine. "That won't ever change." Later, as they wheeled Lily toward the operating room, a nurse handed me a cup of terrible coffee and a sympathetic smile. "The waiting's the hardest part," she said. I nodded, unable to tell her that waiting was all I'd been doing. Waiting tables, waiting for payday, waiting for Lily's father to become a man he never would, now waiting to begin a year of my life that belonged to a stranger. I was still in the waiting room, staring blankly at a muted TV, when I felt someone sit beside me. The subtle scent of expensive cologne registered before I turned to see Alexander Vega, looking impossibly put together in a charcoal suit despite the early hour. "The procedure is going well," he said without preamble. I straightened, suddenly self-conscious of my rumpled clothes and unwashed hair. "How do you know that?" "I have someone in the operating room." At my alarmed look, he added, "An anesthesiologist I trust. He's monitoring everything." Of course he had someone. Alexander Vega seemed to have someone everywhere. "You didn't need to come," I said, unsure whether I was annoyed or relieved by his presence. "I wanted to see how you were holding up." His dark eyes studied my face. "You haven't slept." It wasn't a question. "Would you? If it were your child?" Something flickered in his expression. So quickly I might have imagined it. "No," he said quietly. "I wouldn't." We sat in silence for several minutes, the distance between our worlds making small talk impossible. Finally, he reached inside his jacket and withdrew an envelope. "These are key cards to the East Wing and the main house. Security codes. Some information you'll need." He placed them on the seat between us. "Maria has prepared rooms for both of you. The wing has its own kitchen, though meals are provided in the main dining room if you prefer." I didn't touch the envelope. "Lily will need to stay in the hospital for at least 2 weeks after the transplant. The recovery period has been arranged to continue at home under private medical supervision." His tone brooked no argument. "Dr. Patel has agreed to oversee her care. A recovery room has been prepared with all necessary equipment." I stared at him. "You can't just remove a child from hospital care." "I can provide better care." Again, that hint of offense. "A private nurse. Round-the-clock monitoring, no exposure to hospital infections. Dr. Patel will visit daily." "Did you threaten her?" The words escaped before I could stop them. Alexander's jaw tightened. I don't threaten doctors, Elena. I pay them, handsomely, for their exclusive attention. Before I could respond, the doors opened and Dr. Patel appeared, surgical mask pulled down around her neck. Ms. Carter? The procedure went smoothly. Lily's in recovery now. I stood, relief making me lightheaded. Can I see her? In about 20 minutes, her gaze shifted to Alexander, who had risen beside me. Mr. Vega, I didn't expect to see you here, Doctor. He nodded slightly. She turned back to me with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. We've discussed the home care option. While unusual, the facilities Mr. Vega has prepared exceed our standard recommendations for post-transplant care. I looked between them, understanding that whatever strings Alexander had pulled, they reached further than I'd imagined. I'll see you in recovery, Dr. Patel said, and with another glance at Alexander, disappeared through the doors. What did you do? I asked when we were alone again. Funded a new pediatric research wing. He straightened his already perfect cuffs. Memorial has been trying to secure financing for years, in exchange for letting Lily go. In exchange for allowing her to receive superior private care. He met my gaze directly. The recovery period is crucial, Elena. Would you prefer she spend it in a hospital where nurses are overworked and infections common, or in a controlled environment with dedicated care? Put that way, there was no argument. Still, the speed and extent of his control over the situation left me uneasy. What exactly had I agreed to? I need to see my daughter, I said finally. He nodded, reaching for his phone. My car will be waiting when she's cleared for transport. The nurse and medical equipment are already en route to the house. As he turned to leave, I found my voice again. Alexander? He paused. Thank you. For the donor. Whatever else happens, thank you for that. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. Get some rest, Elena. You start your new life tomorrow. 3 days later, Lily and I were installed in the east wing of Alexander's mansion. True to his word, a recovery room had been transformed into a medical suite that would make most hospitals envious. Lily, still weak but improving daily, was delighted by the enormous windows overlooking gardens and the tablet loaded with every children's movie and game imaginable. Is this a castle, Mommy? She asked our first night, as I tucked her into a bed that could have fit 4 of her. Sort of, I said, smoothing her hair. We're going to stay here while you get better. Is the man with the serious face a king? I smiled despite myself. What man, sweetheart? The one who came to check on me. He looks like the pictures of kings in my books. All tall and... She scrunched her face, searching for the word. Important. Alexander. I hadn't seen him since the hospital, though I knew he was in the house. He's not a king. He owns this house. He's letting us stay here. Is he nice? A complicated question. He helped make you better, I said carefully. That was nice. She nodded, accepting this child's logic, then yawned widely. Story time, I said, grateful for the change of subject. Which one tonight? The princess one, she murmured, eyes already drooping. But the scary part with the dragon, too. I'd barely finished the story when she drifted off, her breathing deep and even. I sat watching her, still marveling at the color returning to her cheeks. Whatever deal with the devil I'd made, seeing her improve made it worthwhile. A soft knock at the door made me turn. Maria, Alexander's severe-looking housekeeper, stood in the doorway. Mr. Vega requests your presence for dinner, she said, her tone making it clear this was less request than command. I glanced down at my jeans and sweater. I'm not really dressed for... Suitable attire has been provided in your dressing room. The nurse will stay with Miss Lily. Her expression softened fractionally. She's doing well. You should eat. 30 minutes later, freshly showered and wearing a simple black dress I'd found hanging in a closet bigger than my bedroom at home, I followed Maria through the main house. Each room we passed seemed designed to emphasize the gulf between Alexander's world and mine. Priceless art, antique furniture, soaring ceilings. Money, but old money, the kind that whispered rather than shouted. The dining room continued the theme, a table that could seat 20 held settings for just 2 at one end. Candles flickered in silver holders taller than my forearm. Alexander stood as I entered, impeccable in a tailored shirt, no tie, dark trousers. "Elena? You look rested." Amazing what actual sleep can do. I remained near the doorway, suddenly awkward. "Maria said you wanted to see me. I thought we should discuss expectations." He gestured to the chair across from his. "And I assumed you'd be hungry." As if on cue, a man in a dark suit appeared with a bottle of wine. Another followed with plates of something that smelled incredible. I sat, placing the linen napkin carefully in my lap. "Is this how you always eat? Full service for an ordinary dinner?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Is this an ordinary dinner?" Point taken. Nothing about this situation was ordinary. The wine was poured, the food served. I waited until we were alone before speaking again. "What expectations did you want to discuss?" Alexander took a sip of wine, studying me over the rim of his glass. "You agreed to be my companion for social events. The first is this Saturday." I nearly choked on my water. "This Saturday? Lily's barely—" "Will be perfectly fine with her nurse for a few hours," he finished smoothly. "It's a charity gala. We'll be photographed arriving together. You'll be introduced as my guest. That's all that's required. And if I refuse?" His expression cooled. "That would be disappointing, especially after the considerable arrangements made for your daughter's care." The reminder of my debt hung between us like an invisible chain. I pushed food around my plate, appetite gone. What am I supposed to wear to a charity gala? "Maria will arrange a fitting tomorrow. Everything will be provided. Everything will be provided." Those words echoed in my mind as I followed a stone-faced Maria through a series of high-end boutiques the next afternoon. A car had arrived promptly at 10, whisking us to the city's exclusive shopping district where, it seemed, Alexander had accounts everywhere. Salespeople fawned over us, or rather, over the Vega name, bringing champagne I didn't drink, and speaking in hushed tones about Mr. Vega's preferences. "I can choose my own clothes," I muttered to Maria after the third boutique, where a rail of pre-selected evening gowns awaited my arrival. Maria's expression remained impassive. "Mr. Vega is particular about appearances, so I'm just a mannequin to be dressed up?" I fingered the delicate beading on a midnight blue gown that probably cost more than 6 months' rent. "You are representing him," she corrected, her tone softening slightly. "The world he moves in, it notices everything." By late afternoon, I had a gala dress, shoes, jewelry, on loan, Maria emphasized, and a lingering sense of being transformed into someone I didn't recognize. The woman in the boutique mirrors, draped in silk and diamonds, looked nothing like Elena Carter, single mother and hotel maid. She looked like she belonged in Alexander Vega's world. That thought troubled me all the way back to the mansion. "Is Lily okay?" I asked as soon as we returned, the shopping bags whisked away by silent staff. "The nurse reports she had lunch, watched movies, and took her medications on schedule," Maria replied. "She's napping now." I nodded, relieved but still anxious to see her. As I turned toward the east wing, Maria cleared her throat. "Mr. Vega would like you to join him for drinks on the terrace at 7. Again, the phrasing suggested option where none existed. "Fine," I said, too tired to argue. "I'll be there." Lily was indeed sleeping when I checked on her. Her breathing deep and even, cheeks flushed with healthy color. I sat beside her bed, watching her chest rise and fall, amazed at how quickly she was improving. The nurse, a kind but no-nonsense woman named Helen, assured me her recovery was proceeding remarkably well. "The donor match was exceptional," she said, checking Lily's vitals with practiced efficiency. "And having this level of care certainly helps." I nodded, guilt and gratitude warring within me. Whatever his motives, Alexander had saved my daughter. That fact alone forced me to honor our arrangement, whatever misgivings I had. At precisely 7, I made my way to the main house. I'd changed into the only outfit I'd brought that wasn't stained or worn, a simple black sundress and sandals that had once been my good clothes, but now seemed painfully inadequate in this setting. The terrace overlooked manicured gardens that stretched to a distant tree line. The evening was warm, golden sunlight slanting across stone balustrades, and highlighting the glass tables where Alexander stood with his back to me, phone pressed to his ear. He spoke rapidly in what sounded like Italian, his voice low and controlled, but with an undercurrent of tension. I hesitated at the threshold, unwilling to interrupt. He must have sensed my presence, though, turning slightly to acknowledge me with a nod before finishing his call. "È fatto. Non discuterò più." He ended the call abruptly, slipping the phone into his pocket before turning to me fully. "Elena." He gestured to the seating area where a bottle of wine and glasses waited. "How was your shopping experience?" "Expensive," I said, taking the seat farthest from him. A smile ghosted across his face as he poured wine into 2 glasses. "Worth every penny, I'm sure." I accepted the glass, but didn't drink. "Why am I really here, Alexander?" He raised an eyebrow. We discussed the terms. My companion for social events. "There are escort services for that sort of thing." His expression hardened. "That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" I leaned forward. "Why me? Why not someone who actually belongs in your world?" Alexander studied me for a long moment, then set his glass down. "Perhaps because I'm tired of people from my world, as you put it." "What does that mean?" "It means every woman I meet has an agenda." He spoke matter-of-factly. "They want my money, my connections, or the status of being with someone like me. They research me before we meet. They know exactly what to say, what to wear, how to act." "And I don't?" I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. "You looked me in the eye and threatened me," he said, something like admiration coloring his tone. "Even after I offered to save your daughter, that interested me. I remembered our phone call, my desperate bravado. I was just trying to protect Lily." "Exactly." He leaned back, dark eyes assessing me. "You weren't trying to impress or manipulate me. Your priority was your child, not me." "That's refreshing." I sipped the wine, considering his words. "So I'm here because I don't care about being here? You're here because you're authentic." Real, a shadow crossed his features. I had enough fakeness in my childhood to last several lifetimes. Something in his tone suggested depths I hadn't expected. Before I could pursue it, he continued. "The gala on Saturday benefits children's medical research. The foundation was established by my mother before she died." His voice was carefully neutral. "It's important to me. I need someone beside me who won't embarrass me or try to leverage the connections there." "And you think that's me? I don't know which fork to use for salad." "You'll learn." He stood, moving to the balustrade to look out over the gardens. The rest, the authenticity, can't be taught. I watched him, this enigmatic man who'd upended my life, wondering what experiences had shaped him. What made someone with his power and wealth seek out someone like me? "Is Lily's father in the picture?" The question came abruptly, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "No." I set my glass down harder than intended. He disappeared as soon as I told him I was pregnant. Alexander turned, his expression darkening. "His name? Why? Planning to hunt him down?" "Perhaps." Something in his voice made me believe him. "It doesn't matter. Lily and I have managed fine without him. Until she got sick." The brutal truth of those words stung. "Yes. Until then." He moved back to his seat, closer to me this time. "Tell me about him." "There's not much to tell." Mark worked at the same hotel when I first started. He was charming, attentive. I shrugged, the pain long dulled to a familiar ache. When I got pregnant, he said he needed time to think. His thinking apparently involved emptying our shared account and leaving town. "He stole from you?" Alexander's voice had taken on a dangerous edge. "It was years ago." "That's not an answer." I met his gaze directly. "Yes, he stole from me. About $4,000. Our entire savings. I was 22, pregnant, and suddenly homeless. Happy? No." His jaw tightened. Men who abandon their children deserve particular consequences. Something in his expression made me shiver. "It's in the past." "Perhaps." He didn't sound convinced. We sat in silence for a moment, the setting sun casting long shadows across the terrace. Finally, I asked the question that had been nagging at me. "The donor, Your cousin. Why was he willing to help? Alexander's expression shuddered. Family obligations. That's all? In my family, when I ask for something, it's provided. His tone left no room for further discussion. How is Lily recovering? I allowed the change of subject. Better than expected. The nurse says she might be able to move around more tomorrow. Good. He nodded, seeming genuinely pleased. The gardens are pleasant for a child. Security has been instructed to ensure you both have privacy while outside. The reminder of the security surrounding us, both protection and subtle imprisonment, dampened the momentary connection I'd felt. The staff are talking, I said suddenly. About why I'm here. Alexander seemed unsurprised. People always talk. They think I'm your mistress, and that bothers you? Shouldn't it? I challenged. I have a daughter who asks questions. He considered this. Tell them, and Lily, whatever makes you comfortable, that you're a guest, a friend. The arrangement is between us, Elena. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression hardening. I need to take this. He stood, already moving away. Maria will show you the dress options for Saturday. Choose whichever you prefer. And just like that, I was dismissed. The brief window into Alexander Vega closing as abruptly as it had opened. Saturday arrived with military precision. A hairstylist and makeup artist appeared in my rooms at noon. The gown, a deep emerald silk that flowed like water, was delivered pressed and perfect. Jewelry followed, emeralds and diamonds that made me afraid to move. These can't be real, I whispered as Maria fastened the necklace. Mr. Vega doesn't do imitations, she replied simply. By 7, I stood in the mansion's grand foyer, feeling like an imposter in someone else's life. The woman in the mirror was unrecognizable, elegant, polished, adorned in finery worth more than I'd earn in a decade. Lily had gasped when she saw me. You look like a princess, Mommy. I'd twirled for her, making her giggle, before kissing her goodnight and extracting a promise to behave for the nurse. Even that small separation made my stomach knot with anxiety. Footsteps on the marble floor made me turn. Alexander descended the grand staircase, the picture of masculine elegance in a tailored tuxedo. He paused when he saw me, something flickering in his dark eyes. The emerald was the right choice, he said, approaching slowly. You look stunning. I look like someone else, I replied honestly. No. He reached me, adjusting the drape of my wrap with practiced hands. You look like yourself, just without the weight of the world on your shoulders for once. The observation was uncomfortably perceptive. Before I could respond, he offered his arm. The car is waiting. Remember, tonight you're simply my guest. Nothing more is expected. The drive into the city passed in relative silence. I stared out the window, trying to calm my nerves, very aware of the powerful man beside me. Only when the car slowed near a brilliantly lit hotel did Alexander speak again. One thing I should mention. His voice was casual, too casual. My former fiancée will likely be there tonight, Sophia Ricci. I turned to him, surprised. You were engaged? Briefly. It ended 6 months ago. His tone was neutral, but I detected something underneath. Anger, pain. She'll almost certainly approach us. She may say things designed to unsettle you. Why? Because that's who she is. The set of his jaw told me there was more to the story. Just be aware. The car stopped at the entrance, where photographers clustered near a red carpet. My heart rate doubled. You didn't mention press, I hissed. Local society pages. Nothing significant. He straightened his already perfect cuffs. Just smile and stay close to me. Before I could protest further, the car door opened. Alexander emerged first, then extended his hand to me. The camera flashes began immediately. I took his hand, focusing on not tripping as I stepped onto the carpet. His fingers tightened around mine. Breathe, Elena, he murmured, his lips close to my ear. You're doing fine. We moved forward, his hand now resting at the small of my back, a gesture both protective and possessive. More flashes. Questions called out. Mr. Vega, who's your date? Alexander, over here. He guided me forward without responding, his expression pleasant but reserved. I mimicked his composure, though my heart hammered against my ribs. At the entrance, he leaned close again. "First test passed," he said, his breath warm against my skin. Now for the wolves inside. The ballroom was a sea of wealth and privilege, women draped in couture and jewels, men in impeccable tuxedos, all moving through the space with the easy confidence of those born to it. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over marble floors and ice sculptures. A string quartet played something classical that I couldn't name, but recognized from movies about people far removed from my reality. Alexander's hand remained at the small of my back, steady and warm as he guided me through the crowd. People parted before him like water, nodding respectfully, some brave enough to offer greetings. He responded with practiced politeness, introducing me simply as Elena, without explanation, the omission somehow emphasizing my importance rather than diminishing it. Alexander Vega. A silver-haired man approached, hand extended. "The Foundation is grateful for your continued support." "Senator?" Alexander shook his hand. "My mother's work deserves to continue." "Indeed." The senator's gaze shifted to me, curious but polite. "And who might this lovely woman be?" "Elena Carter." Alexander's hand pressed slightly firmer against my back. "Elena, Senator Williams serves on the Foundation's board of directors." I extended my hand as I'd seen others do. "It's nice to meet you, Senator. The pleasure is mine." He smiled, though his eyes assessed me with politician's calculation. "I don't believe we've seen you at these events before." "The first time," I managed, acutely aware of my accent compared to the cultured tones around me. "Elena's daughter recently underwent a bone marrow transplant," Alexander said smoothly. "Her recovery is why tonight's fundraising is particularly meaningful to us." The senator's expression softened with what seemed like genuine sympathy. "I'm sorry to hear that. Is she improving?" "Yes," I said, surprised and touched by Alexander's tactical truth. "The transplant was successful. She's recovering well. Wonderful news." The senator glanced between us, clearly recalibrating whatever assumptions he'd made. "I hope we'll see more of you both." As he moved away, I gave Alexander a questioning look. That was almost honest. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "The most convincing lies contain truth, Elena." We moved deeper into the room, pausing to speak with various dignitaries and wealthy patrons. Alexander handled each interaction with smooth confidence, occasionally offering details about me that walked the line between truth and fiction. I was a single mother. My daughter had been ill. I was staying with him during her recovery. All true, yet arranged to imply a relationship beyond our business arrangement. "You're a natural," he murmured as we accepted champagne from a passing waiter. "They're intrigued. Because they're trying to figure out what someone like you is doing with someone like me," I replied, maintaining my smile for watching eyes. "No." His dark gaze held mine. "Because you're not trying to impress them. And that's refreshing in this crowd." I took a sip of champagne to hide my confusion. For a man who'd essentially purchased my company, Alexander seemed genuinely appreciative of my authenticity. Before I could dwell on this contradiction, a ripple of whispers spread through the crowd nearby. Alexander's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. "She's here," he said, his voice dropping lower. I didn't need to ask who. The woman approaching us commanded attention without effort, tall and slim in a crimson gown that clung to her perfect figure. Dark hair swept into an elegant updo that highlighted aristocratic features. She moved like a panther, powerful and dangerous, her eyes, cold and assessing, fixed on Alexander with laser intensity. "Alexander." Her voice was honey poured over ice. "How nice to see you supporting the cause. It's been, 3 months?" "Sophia." His tone remained pleasant, though I felt tension radiating from him. "I wasn't aware you were in town, clearly." Her gaze slid to me, taking in every detail with surgical precision. "Aren't you going to introduce me to your friend?" The slight pause spoke volumes. Alexander's jaw tightened. "Sophia Ricci, Elena Carter." He kept the introduction minimal. "Sophia's father is a business associate." Among other things, Sophia's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Alexander and I have known each other since childhood. We were practically promised to each other, weren't we, darling?" Alexander didn't rise to the bait. Elena's daughter recently underwent a successful bone marrow transplant. She's staying at the estate during recovery. Sophia's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. How charitable of you. Her attention returned to me, gaze sharpening. And what exactly did you do before becoming Alexander's house guest? The implication was clear. I lifted my chin, refusing to be intimidated. I work at the Grand Metropolitan Hotel. As what exactly? Management? Her tone suggested she knew that wasn't the case. Housekeeping, I said clearly, watching her eyes widen fractionally. I clean rooms. A predatory smile spread across her face as she turned back to Alexander. My. How your tastes have simplified. Alexander's expression remained impassive, but I felt his hand at my back tense. Elena has more integrity in one day than most people in this room demonstrate in a lifetime, present company included. Sophia's smile faltered, always the knight in shining armor. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. Tell me, does she know why you really brought her here? About your little problem? I think we've exchanged enough pleasantries, Alexander said coolly. Enjoy your evening, Sophia. He guided me away, his hand now firmly at my waist. I could feel the tension in his body, controlled but unmistakable. What did she mean? I asked quietly when we were out of earshot. About why you brought me here. Sophia specializes in creating drama. His voice was tight. It's best to ignore her. She seemed pretty confident that there's something I don't know. Alexander stopped, turning to face me. There are many things you don't know about me, Elena. Just as there are many things I don't know about you. That's the nature of our arrangement. His evasion only heightened my curiosity, but before I could press further, a chime announced dinner. Alexander offered his arm. Shall we? I took it, aware of eyes following us, especially Sophia's burning gaze from across the room. Dinner was an elaborate multi-course affair at tables adorned with floral arrangements that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Alexander and I were seated at a prominent table near the front, alongside the senator and other foundation board members. I followed Alexander's lead on which fork to use, grateful that my mother had at least instilled basic table manners in me before she died. Throughout the meal, Alexander was attentive, refilling my water glass, explaining dishes in discreet murmurs, his hand occasionally brushing mine when reaching for his wine. To any observer, we appeared to be a couple, comfortable, intimate, connected. His performance was flawless, yet I caught him watching Sophia more than once, his expression unreadable. She held court at a table across the room, laughing too loudly, touching the arm of a handsome man beside her whenever Alexander glanced their way. The theater of former lovers, each pretending indifference while hyper-aware of the other. After dinner came speeches about the foundation's work. Alexander was called to the podium, his presence commanding immediate silence from the crowd. He spoke eloquently about his mother's vision, the children helped by the foundation, the ongoing need for research funding. In that moment, he seemed genuinely passionate, not the calculating businessman I'd come to know. My mother believed that every child deserves a fighting chance, he said, his voice carrying through the hushed room. No parent should have to choose between treatment for their child and financial ruin. Our eyes met across the room, and something passed between us, an acknowledgement of the irony. He had saved Lily, yes, but at a price. A different kind of debt. When he returned to our table, applause still echoing, I leaned closer. You really care about this, don't you? My mother died of leukemia when I was 14, he said quietly, after watching her fight for 2 years. So yes, I care. The revelation stunned me. It was the most personal thing he'd shared, offered without calculation or apparent motive. Before I could respond, the orchestra began playing, signaling the start of dancing. Alexander stood, offering his hand. Shall we? I don't know how to dance, I admitted. Not like this. Just follow my lead. He guided me onto the dance floor where other couples were already moving to a waltz. His hand settled at my waist, the other taking mine. He drew me closer than strictly necessary. Relax, he murmured as we began to move. Dancing is just walking with rhythm. Under his guidance, I found myself gliding across the floor with surprising ease. He was an excellent lead, anticipating my movements before I made them, his body guiding mine with subtle pressure. "Everyone's watching us," I whispered, catching glimpses of curious faces as we turned. "Let them watch." His eyes never left mine. "You're the most interesting woman in the room." "Because I'm with you." "No." His hand tightened slightly at my waist. "Because you're the only one here who doesn't care about being here." As the music continued, I found myself relaxing into his hold, the rhythm becoming natural, almost hypnotic. The lights, the music, the champagne I'd consumed, it all created a dreamlike quality to the moment. "Why did you and Sophia end your engagement?" I asked, the question escaping before I could reconsider. His steps never faltered, but something darkened in his eyes. "She wasn't who I thought she was." "What does that mean?" Alexander was silent for several measures of music. I discovered she was feeding information about my business to a rival, using our relationship to access things she shouldn't have. "She was spying on you?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "Her father has connections to organizations I refuse to work with." His voice had cooled. "She was his perfect spy, placed in my life since childhood. I was blind to it until recently." The revelation cast his wariness in a new light. No wonder he valued my disinterest in his business affairs. "I'm sorry," I said simply. He looked genuinely surprised. "Why would you be sorry?" "Because betrayal hurts, no matter who you are." I thought of Lily's father, the smaller but still painful betrayal of his abandonment. Finding out someone isn't who you thought they were. It changes you. Something shifted in Alexander's expression. A softening around the eyes, a slight relaxation of his guarded posture. "Yes," he said quietly. "It does." The music ended, but he didn't release me immediately. We stood in the center of the dance floor, still connected, something unspoken passing between us. The moment was shattered by the deliberate clearing of a throat. We turned to find Sophia standing nearby, her crimson lips curved in a mocking smile. "May I cut in?" she asked, though it wasn't really a question. For old time's sake, Alexander's jaw tightened, but social protocol left him little choice. He turned to me. "Would you mind, Elena? Just one dance." "Of course not," I said, stepping back. I could use some fresh air anyway. I moved away before he could respond, needing space from the intensity of the moment we'd shared. As I glanced back, I saw Sophia step into Alexander's arms, her body pressing against his with familiar intimacy, her lips close to his ear as she whispered something that made his expression darken. I found my way to a terrace overlooking the hotel gardens, grateful for the cool night air against my flushed skin. Leaning against the stone balustrade, I tried to make sense of the contradictions that were Alexander Vega, cold businessman and passionate advocate, calculating manipulator and wounded son. And more confusing still, the unfamiliar warmth that had spread through me as we danced, his eyes never leaving mine. The night air carried the scent of roses from the gardens below, a welcome respite from the perfumed atmosphere of the ballroom. I breathed deeply, trying to clear my head of the confusing tangle of emotions the evening had stirred. The weight of the borrowed diamonds around my neck suddenly felt suffocating, a physical reminder of how far I was from my real life. Quite the Cinderella story, isn't it? I turned to find Sophia approaching, her crimson dress almost black in the dim light of the terrace. I hadn't heard the door open. "That was a quick dance," I observed, instinctively straightening my posture. Alexander was called away. Her smile was all predator, something about an urgent call. She moved beside me at the balustrade, close enough that I could smell her expensive perfume. For a moment, we both gazed out at the darkness in silence. "Do you know what fascinates me?" she finally said, her voice deceptively conversational. "How quickly he found you after our engagement ended." I kept my expression neutral. "I don't know what you mean." "Of course you don't." She laughed softly. "That's part of your charm, I suppose. This wide-eyed innocence." Her gaze raked over me. "Tell me, how much is he paying you? For you and your conveniently sick daughter?" My hands tightened on the stone railing. "My daughter almost died. There's nothing convenient about that." "Perhaps not." She tilted her head. "But it made you the perfect candidate. Desperate, grateful, malleable. Candidate for what exactly?" Her perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "You really don't know, do you?" She leaned closer. "Alexander needs a wife. Soon. It's a condition of his inheritance. I stared at her, certain she was lying. That's ridiculous. Is it? His grandfather's will was very specific. Full control of Vega Holdings transfers to Alexander when he turns 40, or when he marries, whichever comes first. Her smile turned cruel. He turns 40 in 3 months. Otherwise, control remains with the board of directors, a board that includes my father. The pieces clicked into place, his urgency in finding a companion, the public appearances, the elaborate show for the benefit of others. Why are you telling me this? Professional courtesy. She shrugged one elegant shoulder. One pawn to another. I'm not a pawn. Darling, we're all pawns in Alexander's world. I was simply smart enough to play my own game alongside his. Her expression hardened. But make no mistake. He will use you, marry you if necessary, then discard you once he has what he wants. My mind raced. Could she be right? Was I just a convenient solution to Alexander's inheritance problem? It would explain the strange arrangement, the rushed timeline. You don't know what you're talking about, I said, with more confidence than I felt. Don't I? Her laugh was brittle. I've known him since we were children. His father and mine built their empires together. She leaned closer, her voice dropping. Did he tell you how he got those scars on his back? I frowned, confused. What scars? So you haven't seen him without his shirt? Her smile was knowing. His father was a monster, a brilliant businessman, but a cruel man. Alexander took beatings meant for his younger brother for years. Her eyes narrowed. It taught him to endure pain, to compartmentalize, to use people without remorse. I thought of the brief glimpses of vulnerability I'd seen in him, his passion for the foundation, his quiet fury at Lily's father's abandonment, the softness in his eyes when he spoke of his mother. If you hated him so much, why agree to marry him? Business. She shrugged again. The same reason he agreed to marry me. At least until he discovered I had my own agenda. She examined her manicured nails. Men like Alexander can't stand being outplayed. The terrace door opened, spilling golden light across the stone. Alexander stood framed in the doorway, his expression thunderous as his gaze fixed on Sophia. I believe your date is looking for you, he said, his voice deceptively calm. Sophia straightened, unruffled. We were just having a lovely girl-to-girl chat, getting to know each other. I'm sure. His jaw was tight. Your father's waiting at your table. Something about leaving early. A flicker of unease crossed her perfect features. Always so serious, Alexander. She touched my arm lightly. Think about what I said, Elena. While you still have choices. She glided past him into the ballroom, the scent of her perfume lingering in her wake. Alexander watched her go, then turned to me, his expression unreadable in the half-light. Whatever she told you, is it true? I interrupted. About the inheritance? His silence was answer enough. So I'm just part of your plan to secure your fortune. The hurt in my voice surprised me. A convenient solution to your deadline problem. Alexander moved closer, his eyes never leaving mine. It's not that simple. Explain it to me then. I crossed my arms. Make me understand why you didn't tell me the real reason you needed a companion. He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze shifting to the darkness beyond the terrace. When he spoke, his voice was lower than usual, stripped of its usual controlled confidence. My grandfather built Vega Holdings from nothing. My father expanded it, but through methods my grandfather wouldn't have approved of. His profile was sharp against the night sky. Before he died, my grandfather added codicils to his will, safeguards to ensure the company wouldn't continue down my father's path. Marriage or turning 40, I said. That doesn't explain why you didn't tell me. Would you have believed me? A wealthy man claiming he needed to marry for his inheritance? His laugh was without humor. It sounds like a bad movie plot. So instead you crafted this elaborate charade, making me think you just needed arm candy for events. I needed someone real, Elena. He turned to face me fully. Someone who wouldn't be with me for the money or power. Someone who would make the board believe this was genuine. Because Sophia betrayed you. The pieces continued falling into place. You couldn't trust anyone from your world, so you found someone desperate enough from outside it. A muscle in his jaw ticked. I found someone with integrity. Someone who would do anything for her child. Someone, he hesitated. Someone I could trust precisely because she had no interest in my world. And when your birthday passes, when you secure your inheritance, what happens to me and Lily then? You'll be taken care of. He stepped closer, generously, as we agreed. And if I walk away now, if I take Lily and leave tonight, his expression tightened. You won't. Because of our deal? Because Lily needs continued medical care. His voice was gentle but firm. Care I can provide better than any alternative available to you. The truth of his words stung. He had me trapped not by force or threats, but by my own desperate love for my daughter. This was never about me being authentic or refreshing, I said bitterly. It was about finding someone with no power to betray you. It started that way, he acknowledged, surprising me with his honesty. But it's become more complicated. Complicated how? He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat of him in the cool night air. You fascinate me, Elena, your strength, your devotion to your daughter, the way you look at me like I'm just a man, not a Vega. His proximity was distracting, my body responding traitorously to his nearness. I stepped back, needing distance to think clearly. I want to go back to the house, I said. I need to check on Lily. Alexander nodded, not pushing further. I'll have the car brought around. The ride back to the mansion passed in tense silence. I stared out the window, turning Sophia's revelations and Alexander's partial confirmations over in my mind. The man beside me was still largely a mystery. Powerful, controlling, yet capable of genuine compassion. The man who had saved my daughter's life, but under terms that served his own interests first. As the car pulled through the mansion gates, Alexander finally spoke. I never intended to hurt you, Elena. But you were willing to use me, I replied, my voice tired rather than angry. We're using each other. His honesty was almost brutal. You need Lily's care. I need what you can provide. The difference is, I've been transparent about what I want from you. Except for the small detail about needing a wife. His mouth tightened. That wasn't part of our original arrangement. And now? He didn't answer immediately, his gaze fixed on the darkened mansion ahead. Now I'm asking you to consider it. My heart stuttered. You can't be serious. Deadly serious. He turned to face me. Marry me, Elena. For 1 year. Everything else remains the same. The medical care for Lily, the separate living arrangements if you prefer. After a year and a day, we divorce. You receive $5 million and a house in your name. I stared at him, speechless. You're actually proposing a marriage of convenience in 2025. I'm proposing a solution that benefits us both. His expression was earnest, almost vulnerable. I secure my inheritance, you secure Lily's future, and if I refuse, our original arrangement stands. He held my gaze steadily. I'm a man of my word, Elena. The car stopped at the mansion's entrance. Before the driver could open the door, I turned to Alexander. I need time to think about this, he nodded. Of course. Take all the time you need. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I have exactly 12 weeks until my birthday. Inside, I went directly to the East Wing, needing to see Lily, to ground myself in the one truth I was certain of, my love for my daughter. She was sleeping peacefully, her color good, breathing even. Helen, the night nurse, assured me everything had been fine. I kissed Lily's forehead gently, then retreated to my own room, methodically removing the borrowed finery. The emerald dress, the diamond jewelry, the crystal-studded heels. With each piece, I felt more like myself again. In the shower, I scrubbed away the last traces of the night. The expensive makeup, the hairspray, the lingering scent of Alexander's cologne that had somehow transferred to my skin during our dance. But his proposal couldn't be washed away so easily. It echoed in my mind as I dressed in my own worn pajamas and slipped between silk sheets that cost more than my monthly rent. $5 million. A house. Security for Lily that I could never provide on my own. Medical care throughout her childhood. The best schools. College without debt. All for a year of my life. A year pretending to be Alexander Vega's wife. I tossed and turned, sleep elusive. Near dawn I gave up and wandered to the wing's small kitchen for tea. To my surprise, a light was already on, and Alexander sat at the counter, suit jacket discarded, tie loosened, dark hair slightly disheveled. He looked up as I entered, surprise flickering across his features. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. I shook my head, suddenly aware of my threadbare pajamas and tangled hair. "Too much on my mind." He nodded, understanding without words. "Tea?" He gestured to the steaming cup before him. "Please." He rose to prepare it, his movements surprisingly domestic, for a man who likely had staff to perform every task. We were silent as he steeped the tea, added honey without asking how I took it. He'd noticed, I realized. This man who controlled empires had noticed how I drank my tea. "Alexander?" I said as he handed me the cup, our fingers brushing. "Why me?" "Really?" He considered the question longer than I expected. "When I saw you in the hospital that night, exhausted, terrified for your daughter, yet still standing, still fighting, I saw someone extraordinary." His eyes met mine. "Someone who would do anything for those she loves. Someone incorruptible in a world where everyone has a price." "Everyone has a price," I said quietly. "Mine is just my daughter's life." "No." He shook his head. "Your price isn't money or power for yourself. That makes you rare." He hesitated, then added, "And valuable." "As a wife?" "As a partner." The word seemed to surprise even him. "Someone I can trust precisely because your priorities are clear. Lily first, always." I sipped my tea, considering his words. "And what would this partnership entail exactly?" "Public appearances, living here. Separate bedrooms if you prefer." His gaze held mine, but a real chance to know each other, without pretense. "And after the year, you'll be free, with the means to give Lily everything she deserves." His expression softened. "But perhaps by then, you might find this world isn't as foreign as it seems now, that we aren't as different as you believe." I studied him. This complex, controlled, powerful man who had upended my life, saved my daughter, and now offered a devil's bargain too tempting to dismiss. "I'll give you my answer in the morning," I said finally. He nodded, accepting this. As I turned to leave, he spoke again. "Elena?" I paused at the doorway. "Whatever you decide, I want you to know." He hesitated, vulnerability flashing briefly across his features. "You've reminded me what it means to care about something beyond business, beyond power. That alone is worth more than you know." In that moment, looking at Alexander Vega, billionaire, power broker, wounded soul, I realized that perhaps I wasn't the only one being rescued in this strange arrangement. "Good night, Alexander," I said softly. "Good night, Elena." As dawn broke over the gardens, I sat beside Lily's bed, watching her peaceful sleep, her chest rising and falling with healthy breaths. I thought of the future stretching before us, uncertain, precarious if we left this place, secure but complicated if we stayed. When she opened her eyes, smiling sleepily up at me, I knew my answer, had perhaps known it all along. Later that morning, I found Alexander in his study, already immersed in work despite the early hour. He looked up as I entered, his expression carefully neutral. "I've made my decision," I said, my voice steady. He set down his pen, giving me his full attention. "And?" "Yes." I met his gaze directly. 1 year. For Lily's future." Something flickered in his dark eyes. Relief, satisfaction, and perhaps something deeper I wasn't ready to name. "For Lily," he agreed, rising from his desk. "And perhaps by the end, for us as well." As he crossed the room toward me, his expression softening into a genuine smile I'd rarely seen, I realized that this bargain, born of desperation, necessity, and calculation, had somehow opened the door to something neither of us had anticipated. Not love, not yet, but possibility. And for now, that was enough.